Okay, there we go. Recording in progress. Thank you so much. Really pleased that everybody's joining us today for the final virtual Vet to Vet Cafe offered by MJHS. And before we begin and introduce our guests, I would like to introduce my supervisor and the person responsible for getting the We Honor Veterans program started at MJHS. Toby Weiss is the Assistant Vice President of Cultural Diversity. And take it away, Toby. I'd like you just to get us rolling.
Thank you, Ashton. I think you pretty much said it. I will just say that I will add a little ending to one thing that you said. This may be the last Vet to Vet Cafe for 2024, but it is by no means the last Vet to Vet Cafe that we will be conducting. Stay tuned for 2025. We're very, very grateful to all of you for coming and attending today. I've had the privilege through my relationship with Ashton to come to know Benjamin. Benjamin, I think the world of you. You do an awesome job, and you are an advocate and a friend to every veteran. We look forward to hearing from all of you, Mary and Michael, and we know, as I'll just echo one thing that Ashton said, we get people very, very late in the game when they're facing terminal illness. And unfortunately, many are not able to take advantage of the benefits that they may in fact be entitled to. Not only veteran benefits, but also benefits entitled through the federal government for hospice and palliative care. And I hope and I urge all of you attending today to take good notes, to connect with one another, and to help further the information and improve awareness and health literacy among the veteran populations and their families that we serve. And now I will turn it back over to Ashton. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Toby. Yes, I just launched a poll. We would like to know a little bit about you, our audience. Just there's a couple of questions in there, if you wouldn't mind taking a couple of seconds to do that. And while you're doing that, just to let you know, this program is being recorded. So all your cameras are inaccessible and microphones are muted because we've got such a large audience. But that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. We have a Q&A feature, and that is enabled. So please post questions in there. We'll be addressing those throughout the program. And then toward the end of the program, we'll be addressing them live as well. And let's see. Also, at the end of this program, it will be recorded and shared with you, in addition to some of the recorded programs that we did earlier this year and last year. There's a total of 8. And I know that we keep saying that this is the end of the virtual Vet to Vet, but we're taking it on the road. The reason for that is that it is meant to be an opportunity to engage with the community and talk about some of these sensitive issues that are not easy to talk about. We've got the resources, we've got the experience, and we want to bring it to you and bring it to the community so we can do it in person. So please be on the lookout. We'll be coming to a community near you in New York City and Nassau County. And finally, at the end of this program, there'll be a short survey after you close down the Zoom. It'll appear in a different browser. Your feedback's really important to us, so I hope that you can take advantage of that and share your thoughts with us. And this program is meeting the special needs of veterans and their families at the end of life. And I'm very pleased that we've got a wonderful lineup of guest speakers. We've got Benjamin Pomerantz from the New York State Department of Veterans Services, also Mary Lizama from the New York State Department of Veterans Services, and we have Michael, and he is going, Michael Fenn, and he is with the National Cemetery at Calverton, and they're going to be sharing some important insight into how to access veteran benefits. It's not easy, but they're skilled experts in this regard, and so without them, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do. And so I just want to share a little bio for each of them before we get started here. Benjamin Pomerantz, Esquire, is the Deputy Counsel for the New York State Department of Veterans Services. In this role, he supports legislative priorities for the agency and helps manage the legal needs and concerns in regards to laws, regulations, and proposed legislation for New York's veterans, service members, and their families. Benjamin also supervises the division's appellate unit and all of the division's training efforts, serves as the agency legislative liaison, and leads several of the division's programming initiatives. His work focuses on advocacy and assistance for veterans, service members, and military families on a wide variety of legal issues, from disability compensation to discharge upgrades to access to health care. Benjamin graduated as a salutatorian of his class in Albany Law School in 2013, where he founded and directed the school's Veterans Rights Pro Bono project, for which he received the President's Pro Bono Service Award from the New York State Bar Association. He has published articles in journals at over a dozen law schools, co-authored a chapter on veterans treatment courts about the intersection between veterans law and mental health services that was published in 2019, and is a true expert in all things veteran related. Mary Lizama is a Veterans Benefits Advisor at the New York State Department of Veterans Services. She served her country proudly for 14 and a half years in the U.S. Army, with her first tour taking place in Iraq, an experience that she says transformed my entire being. With the sound of mortar attacks, the MPs and voice commands indicating we were under attack, we'll never go away. Running for cover is something that no training can prepare you for. Mary has completed 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Kuwait, and these experiences provided her with the opportunity to travel and enjoy life as a soldier, shaping who she is today. Mary earned an MBA at St. Joseph's University and a BA from Baruch College. She is honored to continue serving veterans who are in need of support for mental, emotional, financial, and benefit advisement that they so deserve. And Michael Fenn is currently serving as the administrative officer for Long Island, Cypress Hills, and St. Albans National Cemetery, a post he has held since 2022. In this role, he is responsible for all administrative, logistical, budgetary, special projects planning, and outreach operations. Prior to his appointment, Mr. Fenn served as the budget analyst for Long Island National Cemetery, managing a budget of over $9 million. During this time, Mr. Fenn was named North Atlantic District Employee of the Quarter and nominated for the NCA Employee of the Quarter. Mr. Fenn began his career with the National Cemetery Administration in December of 2018, after transferring from the Northport VA Medical Center as a program support assistant. Mr. Fenn's previous positions include VA Eligibility Officer, Medical Support Assistant, and Director of Security for Time Incorporated. Mr. Fenn retired from the U.S. Marine Corps in 2014 as an infantry officer and information operations officer. As an infantry officer, he deployed over 4 times to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, taking part in the Battle of Fallujah, and once in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Mr. Fenn also completed 4 Westpac deployments, 1 RIMPAC, and 1 UDP in Okinawa, and other numerous deployments and international exercises. Mr. Fenn is a graduate of the University of Rochester. He earned a bachelor's degree in brain cognitive science, concentration and language development, and acquisition, and a minor in history. Mr. Fenn is also a graduate of the Defense Language Institute, receiving a certification in Arabic. Mr. Fenn has also graduated from numerous FEMA emergency operations courses and holds several certifications as an active volunteer firefighter. My goodness, this panel is amazing. So I'm so glad that you're all here today. We're going to start with Mary. Mary and I have actually worked on a number of cases while I've been with MJHS. And as I said, we've got such time constraints trying to get these things going. But Mary, would you like to share a little bit of some of the things that we've seen come across and some of the things that we've been able to overcome?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I had the opportunity to work with Ashton, and I believe that every case is very different. And for whatever reason, either the family members never act on helping the veteran, or sometimes the veterans themselves, they isolate. And perhaps they don't get the adequate treatment, or perhaps the benefits that they entitle for whatever reason. But since Ashton and I started working together, we were able to somehow help some family members, where at times we thought that the claim will not move forward. And I believe that I have always been honest with Ashton, and sometimes I had to say, it's not going to work. And my opinion is, X, Y, and Z, or sometimes I could say, I'll give it a shot 50-50. If it works, and as long as the family members understand that we're not promising an excellent outcome, but at least we gave it a fair shot. So for example, one of the cases that we worked together was the widow, there was a claim for hypertension, but it wasn't granted. But hypertension somehow contributed to the cost of death. The primary cause of death, I think, was a heart condition, which the veteran was already service connected, but hypertension was not. When we put the claim, we told the VA, one, the veteran served in Vietnam, he was exposed to Agent Orange, and how the hypertension, which was diagnosed and treated at Manhattan VA, contributed and exacerbated his heart condition. And yes, she was granted DIC. There was another case where, as we know, New York City doesn't recognize Commonwealth marriages, but because the amount of evidence that the family members were able to gather, they got a letter from I think they were Jewish, I think from the synod, what is this? I forgot the name of it. One of the whole thing is that they were able to gather the evidence. I think one of the, I forgot the name of the person that gave the letter. The veteran had, I guess, a prior marriage, and their kids were able to advocate and say, yes, we saw them, how they live as a couple, and they also were presenting themselves to society as a married couple. They had a lot of bills under their names. And once we put everything together, we told the VA, yes, they were not aware that New York City did not recognize common law as a legal marriage per se, in order for them to, not per se, but for the widow to be entitled to the military benefits. And yes, with all the evidence that we gather, the widow was granted DIC as well. The other case where I honestly believe that there was no, it was like a 50-50 shot. One, because the prostate cancer, we were blaming to a, I think was a plant, a chemical plant. The veteran never was treated, or there was no evidence in his service treatment record attesting to prostate cancer. But somehow when we explain how we believe that the chemical plant contribute to his prostate cancer, in addition to his job duty, which was dealing with batteries, and how he was exposed to additional chemicals, we believe that the prostate cancer was a result of both the vertex where he was residing nearby, and also his job in service. And yes, he was granted the prostate cancer, but we're still working on something else. Hopefully we'd also get an outcome on that decision from the VA. So yes, he's granted, but right now we are trying to overcome an obstacle, proving that the surviving spouse, the tribal marriage, whether it's being recognized in New York as a legal marriage. But that's something that perhaps later on we do get a good outcome. And I think the rest of the claims that we have looked at with Ashton, it has been very challenging at times, and sometimes, those claims will move forward, or sometimes I just had to deliver, the bad news. But at the end of the day, I believe that Ashton is doing an amazing work. We are here, yes, to provide quality of service to the veterans and also to the family members, and to help them understand what is their benefits.
Excellent. Yes, and it's always an honor and a privilege to be working with you, Mary. And yes, we have overcome some crazy obstacles. And one other case that we discovered through your help and advocacy was the requirement for a veteran to be on DIC for 10 years at the minimum for the spouse to be eligible for DIC is less for a POW. And we had that one POW that was only receiving 100% for less than 2 years, but he only had to receive it for 1 year as a POW. So his surviving spouse was able to get DIC through that. And these are things that you just wouldn't know. And so without your expertise and your commitment to assisting these families, we wouldn't be able to do what we do and getting some of these benefits secured. And I know that we've got some others that we're still working on, and there will be more. But we've done like 80 referrals so far this year for veterans and patients, whether it's trying to get a DD-214 or getting deeper into actually putting in a claim. But that's the first step. A lot of families don't have the DD-214, but as Toby's mentioned, it's the golden ticket. I think she actually mentioned that in a meeting we had earlier today, not during this one, but it's a golden ticket. And it's the first thing that we ask families about. And then we can determine where they served. If they were in Vietnam, for instance, Agent Orange is such a toxin. It's done so much damage, but thankfully the PACT Act, which we'll address a little bit more later, has really helped us provide support for families with less legwork to prove that they were there. As long as it shows on the DD-214, they've got that medal showing that they served in the conflict, then they're good to go.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that you're working this afternoon and doing some other things, but you're welcome to stick around. If there's more that you would like to share, please, Mary, you still have the floor.
Well, another thing that I would like to share is for you guys also to understand what is something that is considered a service-related condition. So when we try to file a claim, we also had to make sure that whatever condition the family members or the veterans themselves, right, they're trying to file, either they were treated, diagnosed in service, and they also have a current diagnosis with current treatment, and also what's the relationship to whatever condition they're trying to file for with the military. If not, when there's no evidence, we can come up with something, but as long as there is some type of credibility to the condition and to his service, like the other person that we said, perhaps his job created that condition. If he was exposed to toxic fumes, there are ways of going around and trying to get the veteran to either become service connected or just do an intent to file, and then file the claim before we lose the veteran. But at least we start doing a legwork and then just continue working with the veteran. Another thing is a non-service connected pension. When we talk about non-service connected pension, one of the criteria is whether the veteran served during a wartime era. And of course, there is an income requirement. If they're above the income requirement, then unfortunately, they're not going to qualify. And when we say an income requirement, we're talking about whether they're getting Social Security, or perhaps they have some type of investments in the stock market and, they get paid out dividends, or they have savings and, they get paid interest. Everything counts as income. But as long as the veteran meets the criteria for the income, or even the surviving spouse, if they meet the criteria and they're below the income requirement, then yes, we can always process pension claims for the survivors or also for the veterans if for whatever reason they never had any injuries or they were never diagnosed with their illness in service.
So true. And medical nexus letters can come in very handy in showing the correlation between service and an injury. Medical nexus letters is something that we focused exclusively on in one of our previous Vet to Vet cafes, but it's a letter from a healthcare provider, can be a nurse, a doctor, a nurse practitioner, somebody that's a medically trained clinician working with the patient, that states it's at least as likely as not that X condition is due to their military service or exposure to whatever toxin they could have possibly been exposed to. And that one case with, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, well, that one case that you were mentioning earlier, it was a veteran who didn't serve in war, but he was still exposed to many toxins just from his job and also from the adjacent chemical plant that was beside the military base that had subsequently been closed down as a Superfund because it was just so toxic. So that evidence that we're able to share with the VA made them have a quick determination for that veteran and their family.
And what I was going to say was that even a layperson statement, and I think the wife testimony, we were able to use it as well and put it in the 41, the 38, saying, you know, how she witnessed and, you know, how the veteran was able to describe what he experienced or perhaps where he was residing, how far. And yes, a layperson statement can also attest or perhaps creates another evidence to saying, yes, we believe that because he used to mention, you know, X, Y, and Z, it contributed to his condition. And we're saying, even though our medical, we don't have a medical background, we believe that his condition started at service and is related to service. And throughout the years, he continued to get the medical care. And then, you know, it continues to exist till now. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Very
And
true.
yeah, and that's all I have for now. I have a client outside, but if you have any questions, you know how to find me. I'm always here to help you as much as I can. At times, you know, it not be right away, but you know, we know how to find each other. And I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for, you know, allowing me to help you and also, you know, helping each other. At the end of the day, we're here to serve the veterans and the family members.
Absolutely. Much appreciated, Mary. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. And yes, if we have follow-up questions, I know how to find you too.
Yes. All right. Take care, guys.
Okay,
Nice meeting you
you
guys.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Next up, we are going to welcome Benjamin Pomerantz. Benjamin and I go way back. I started working with veterans at my last job at Sage when I worked on their Sage Vets program for a number of years before shifting over to MJHS. And he was one of the first people I met. And what an inspiration, and how lucky was I to meet him so early on in this new career that I started. As a veteran, there's nothing more meaningful than helping out other veterans. And without people like Benjamin and Mary, like helping us learn how to do that, we wouldn't be able to get very far. So Benjamin, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Ashton. Right back at you. It's been an honor to work with you, and looking forward to many more good opportunities ahead to advocate on behalf of those who have served. I see a lot of familiar names in the chat. Good to see you all again. And for those whom I have not met, I serve as Deputy Counsel for the State Department of Veteran Services. I have the honor of being colleagues with Mary and with our entire network of Veterans Benefits Advisors across the entire state of New York. So I thought today what I would do is focus on a couple of key things that lead to individuals, both veterans and members of their families, to self-select out of the process of preparing, presenting, and prosecuting claims for their earned benefits. And this happens a lot. This happens far too often. Those of you who work in the veterans advocacy space, I'm sure you have your own stories you could share of meeting veterans who either insist that they are not veterans or who say that they are not eligible for a certain benefit or program and service when they are. And so we'll talk through a number of those scenarios today, as well as some of the roadblocks that people may encounter in this space, and how to overcome those roadblocks, most importantly. Just want to do a quick audio check. Can everyone hear me okay? I just got a weird note on my phone saying that bandwidth is low.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. All right, so number one on the hit parade that comes up all the time, veterans saying, and this happens to me at least once a week, if not every day. It happened as recently as this morning at about 9:30 a.m. Veterans saying that they are not veterans. Now, why does this happen? This may seem completely bizarre to many of you. Why would someone who has served this country in the military not acknowledge their veteran status? And the answer is because there's a lot of different mythology out there that needs to be dispelled, and we can help dispel it, about who qualifies as a veteran under the law. Definition of veteran, the baseline definition is simple. Title 38, Section 101, subsection 2 of the U.S. Code. A veteran is a person who served in the active military, naval, air, or space service and was discharged or released therefrom under conditions other than dishonorable. Period. Full stop. No requirement that you have to serve in combat. No requirement that you have to serve outside the continental USA. No length of service requirement beyond 1 day. All right. So there are certain benefits, and I'll talk about them in a few minutes, that do have some additional requirements layered on top of them. But as far as being able to qualify as a veteran, as far as what those basic criteria are, military, naval, air, space service, okay, for at least 1 day, active duty, discharged or released there from under conditions other than dishonorable, you qualify, okay? And too often veterans do not realize that they qualify under that title, that they've earned that title. Now, I mentioned discharged or released. That leads to the next issue. What happens if someone has lost track of their discharge paperwork? This happens all the time in cases that Ashton and I have worked on through the years, right? The DD 214, Department of Defense Form 214, is a one-page document, awfully easy to lose. And so we may encounter someone, unfortunately, near the end of their life, where they have no idea where that one page is. And the common myth, the common perception is, well, okay, I can't file for anything then because I lost a discharge document. I cannot prove my military service. That is false. False because under Title 38 of the U.S. Code, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and specifically the Veterans Benefits Administration of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, has what's known as a duty to assist, okay? Statutory duty to assist. That means that the VA has to take certain measures to help a veteran or to help a eligible survivor, spouse, child, dependent parent of the veteran when they are filing a claim for benefits. That help includes tracking down federal records that could help the veteran or spouse or child or parent in pursuit of their claim. Well, okay. So what is a military discharge document? By definition, it is a federal record, okay? It's a record of the U.S. Department of Defense. The VA, once they receive that claim package with the statement that, hey, this person served from this year to this year, but they've lost track of their discharge documents through the years, they will go and they will track down those documents. They will interact with the National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis, and if there are documents to be found, they will find them. And that is their obligation under the law to do so. So if you are working with a veteran who says to you, I can't file, I've lost my discharge documents. If you are working with a surviving spouse or a surviving child of a veteran, and they say, I have no idea where my spouse kept their military paperwork, and therefore I can't file for benefits. No, you can shut that down really fast by saying, let's file anyway, let's get that claim downrange, because the VA has that statutory duty to assist. Number 3, too much time has gone by. Okay, again, I hear this all the time. Too much time has gone by since my last day in military service, therefore I cannot file a claim for benefits. That is not true. You can look all day long in the statutes that govern benefits like disability compensation or like non-service connected pension that Mary was talking about. There is nothing saying you have to file within X number of years of your last day in uniform. My personal record so far is I won a case for a veteran who filed for the first time in his life 65 years after his last day in service, okay? And we won that claim at the 100% rate, the highest possible rate. That personal record may be overcome soon because I just filed a claim this week for a 99-year-old World War II veteran who earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, who flew 40 missions in the Pacific in a B-24, never had filed a claim. Didn't realize that he was even eligible, potentially, for veterans benefits, all right? So it never is too late. And even in the end of life period, it is never too late to get that claim downrange. You may wonder why, if a veteran is nearing the end of their life, it might be so important to send a claim package downrange to the VA. In thinking about that, we want to think not only about the veteran, but also about members of the veteran's family. Mary mentioned earlier DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation, very important benefits for primarily surviving spouses, also surviving minor children, and occasionally surviving dependent parents of the veteran who has passed away. Fastest track toward getting dependency and indemnity compensation granted is if the veteran passed away from a medical condition that is linked to their military service. We get a claim downrange even near the end of that veteran's life and establish before the VA that this veteran's medical condition is at least as likely as not linked to their time in military service, and the veteran then passes away from that condition, that sets up that spouse, that sets up those minor children, right, to be able to access the dependency and indemnity compensation benefits, which can provide very important financial support for them, tax-free financial support as their life continues after the veteran passes away. Which leads to another issue that comes up quite a bit. I'm fighting a case with this right now, and that is death certificates. Sometimes, and it seems like lately, more than sometimes, the individual who fills out the death certificates, for whatever their reason, leaves the line blank under the field for cause of death. Now, this is a problem because, again, cause of death can matter greatly in determining if the individual is eligible for dependency and indemnity compensation or not. The VA can come back and say, wait, if the death certificate is blank, how can you prove that the cause of death was linked to the individual's military service? Well, the good news is a death certificate is not the only possible medium of proof, okay? There's other options out there. And the key provision of law that you want to keep in mind when thinking about this is Title 38, Section 3.211, Title 38, Section 3.211 of the Code of Federal Regulations, okay? Regulations written by the VA itself, which makes it clear that even if the veteran does not have a death certificate, okay, which shows the cause of death on it, they can still gain proof in other ways, like, for example, going back to the hospital where they passed away and getting the hospital records. For example, getting an affidavit for a person or from a person who was present at the time of the veteran's passing, who can verify with accuracy what the cause of death was, okay? So we can be creative as advocates here. There are other ways to prove cause of death beyond just the death certificates. Sometimes, and this is the case I'm fighting right now, sometimes the VA will come back and say, no, it has to be the death certificates. That's inaccurate, and that's why there is an appeals process, which gets to the point about appeals. Too often, veterans, spouses of veterans, children of veterans, parents of veterans do not realize that they have a right to appeal. Too often they think, okay, I got my decision letter in the mail from the VA, and it says what it says, and that's final. That's not the case. Title 38 provides a robust mechanism of various lanes where an individual claimant can say, no, I don't think this decision is right, and they can pursue an appeal. I have the honor of leading our appellate unit for the New York State Department of Veterans Services. We're handling these types of cases every day, where veterans and spouses, children of veterans are coming back to the VA saying, take a second look at this, because this case does not seem to be resolved correctly. And that can be true in cases of an outright denial. It can also be true in a case where the individual did not receive the full measure of benefits that they should have gotten. Okay, for example, a veteran who received a disability compensation rating of, let's say, 10%, when really the nature and severity of their service-connected disabilities more accurately reflect a disability compensation rating of, let's say, 50%. Disability compensation ratings are all based on what's called the VA's schedule of ratings. Every medical condition or class of conditions has its own diagnostic code, and you can go in and look at the language around that code, compare the various layers of severity or levels of severity to the veteran's current condition and current symptoms, see where it matches up. And if you're seeing that the percentage awarded by the VA seems to be lower than what it should be based on what that schedule of rating says, that is grounds for appeal seeking that higher rating from the VA. All right, couple more things, and I'll turn the mic back over to Ashton to make sure I don't put anybody to sleep with my rattling on here. But I want to make sure we focus a little bit on the family members after a veteran passes away, right? Because that's part of end-of-life care as well, making certain that after the veteran passes, the family has things in place and knows what to do and knows that they have good advocates in their corner to help them in that next step of the journey. One of the biggest challenges, and Mary mentioned this briefly earlier, I want to return to it quickly here to drive the concept home, is making certain that the VA understands that there was a valid marriage in place. Okay, how does the VA determine if a marriage is valid? Well, they look at the laws of the jurisdiction where the marriage took place. Okay, so for example, common law marriage, like the case Mary referred to. If the veteran and the veteran's, I'll put it in quotation marks or air quotes, spouse, lived together for a long time and held themselves out to the community as a married couple in a jurisdiction where common law marriage is legal, that's fine. They're good to go. When the veteran passes away, even if that marriage was not solemnized through a ceremony, either religious or civil, that's okay because it was still seen as a valid common law marriage in that jurisdiction. And now let's take New York State, since a lot of us here are from New York. In New York, it's a bit more complicated because New York State has not recognized common law marriage since the 1930s. But there is still a pathway to being able to get the VA to recognize the validity of that marriage, even if there was not a ceremonial marriage that took place, and even if the state in question does not recognize common law marriage. And it goes like this. The veteran or the surviving spouse, again in quotes, the veteran, has to show two things to the VA. Number one, they have to show that the individual in question, or individuals in question more accurately, held themselves out to the community as if they were a married couple. Okay, and we can show whatever kinds of proof we can get our hands on to verify this, right? Let's say they have a lease for their home in both names. That can help. Let's say they purchased an automobile and the automobile is in both names. That helps. Joint bank accounts, that can help. Exchange of rings, that can help. Anything where they're acting in a way that one would expect a married couple to act in a community setting can help. There's one famous Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims case in this area where the pivotal piece of evidence involved a raffle ticket at a church raffle, where the two individuals in question put their names down as if they were sharing a last name and as if they were a married couple. That's an example of them holding themselves out to the community as if they were married. And then part two of the equation is the individuals in question must not have known of any legal impediment to their marriage. In other words, they legitimately thought that New York State was a common law marriage state, which we see all the time. Right, the surviving spouse said, yeah, this counts, right? Isn't there this thing, common law marriage, isn't that nationwide? Well, technically no, but the VA will say, look, if you had no idea and you truly held yourselves out to the community as if you were a married couple, that is sufficient for us to open up the doors for survivor's benefits for you as a surviving spouse. Another issue we sometimes see is remarriage. What happens if the surviving spouse later remarries? Well, it depends. It depends which benefit we are talking about. If we are talking about survivor's pension, okay, survivor's pension, which is an income-based and asset-based benefit for surviving spouses who have low income and limited personal assets, remarriage ends the benefits. No questions asked, okay? The VA says if you remarry or when you remarry, you cannot receive survivor's pension after that point. But dependency and indemnity compensation, which you heard Mary talk about, if a surviving spouse of a veteran gets remarried, they may be able to continue receiving that benefit. How do we know? Every lawyer's favorite answer. It depends. It depends on the age at which they remarried, okay, which is kind of confusing. What the VA tells us, what federal law tells us, is if the surviving spouse remarried on or after December 16th, 2003, and they were age 57 or above at the time of remarriage, they can continue to receive dependency and indemnity compensation, or they can even file for the first time for and receive dependency and indemnity compensation as long as that remarriage took place at age 57 or above. Below age 57, the benefit stops or the benefit cannot be applied for. So with remarriage for dependency and indemnity compensation, it all depends on the timeline. What is the age at which they applied? And then lastly, when looking at what happens if the veteran and spouse are not living together at the time of death, as happens sometimes, because you will see language in federal law saying, well, to get these survivors benefits, you have to have lived with the veteran without a break until their death. And a lot of times surviving spouses will say, well, okay, I can't get this benefit because we were living separately at the time the veteran passed away. That's not necessarily the case because there's some more language to look at. And it says, if you are separated from the veteran at the time of the veteran's death, and if you were not at fault, kind of archaic language there, but if you were not at fault for the separation, you can still be regarded as an eligible surviving spouse to receive survivor's benefits, like survivor's pension or dependency and indemnity compensation, all right? So just because they're living separate and apart at the time the veteran passes, if they're still lawfully married, if there still is no judgment of divorce in play here, and if the spouse can show, look, I'm not the one at fault here, I was abandoned by the veteran, or there was abusive conduct by the veteran, or whatever the case may be, that surviving spouse can still apply for and receive survivor's benefits. Last one, and I promise I'll stop after this. There is a myth out there which goes like this. When the veteran passes away, the claim dies. Okay, the claim dies with the veteran. That's a myth. It's true in a limited sense that the veteran, when the veteran passes away, that puts an end to the payouts for, let's say, disability compensation, okay? But you can have the spouse applying for things like dependency and indemnity compensation or survivor's pension, like we talked about here. What if the claim is pending? What if the VA is still adjudicating the claim at the time when the veteran passes away? Well, there might be some options there as well. There's something called a substitution claim that is often not common knowledge. Substitution claim means within 1 year of the veteran passing, an eligible survivor, like, for example, a surviving spouse, can file with the VA and say, look, I don't want to see this claim die, right? This pending claim, I want to stand in the shoes of the veteran who has passed away and continue pursuing that case until its completion. And as long as an eligible survivor files within 1 year of the veteran's passing, they can do that. They can stand in the decedent's shoes, so to speak, and have every legal right that the veteran would have enjoyed. They could add new evidence into the claim. If they dislike a decision, they can appeal it. Anything that the original claimant, the veteran who has now passed away, could have done, they have the ability to do as long as they file and obtain that substitute claimant status within 1 year of the veteran's passing. All right? So that was a teacup sip through a fire hose of a whole bunch of different things that illustrate common reasons why veterans and spouses of veterans and children of veterans self-select out, unfortunately, far too often from the benefits eligibility process. And the key takeaway, hopefully, is that a lot of these cases are deeper than they may initially seem. The key thing to do is to not jump to conclusions, to dig into what the law actually says. And the good news is here in New York State, there are lots of resources out there, including our agency, State Department of Veteran Services, including the various county veteran service agencies, some of whom I see have folks on the line today, the New York City Department of Veteran Services. Anyone who is an accredited representative before the VA is able to assist with these types of cases, and we do the work free of charge. So please don't jump to the conclusions. If someone says, oh, I'm not eligible, don't necessarily take them at face value. They might be falling prey to one of those common myths out there. Let's get them in connection with a veteran service officer or a veterans law attorney who's doing this work. Again, free of charge is the key phrase here of the day. And let's make certain that they have that full veterans benefits checkup so that way they can get the full measure of what is rightfully theirs. Ashton, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. That's amazing information. And there's so much more. It just goes to show the breadth and scope of even something as simple as a spouse and the relationship to the veteran. And even if they're not married, sometimes you can still show that they presented as a married couple in a state like New York that doesn't recognize common law marriage. It does vary state by state, but the essence of these benefits is federally offered, what we're talking about so far. There are state veteran benefits that differ in New York and other states too. We could get a little bit into that if we have time today. But before we turn it over to Michael, I just wanted to ask you about two things. One, a surviving spouse can apply for not only DIC, but also service-connected death. If that injury that the veteran sustained during their service led to their death and they were 100% service-connected, they can apply for both. Isn't that true?
Are you talking about disability compensation as well as DIC, Ashton?
No, DIC and also service-connected death. Are they two different things?
They are. So the way it could work is you may have a situation where the claim for disability compensation is still pending, still open when the veteran passes away. And so if that surviving spouse goes in, they file within 1 year of date of death to become a substitute claimant, they can keep on pursuing the disability compensation claim and hopefully win that claim. And also concurrently file for the separate benefit of dependency and indemnity compensation. And in that scenario, it is possible to win both and receive tax-free federal dollars for both.
Excellent. And then the second question is, I am very lucky to have benefited from the New York State Department of Veteran Services VSO training program. I am a VSO, I'm certified. I don't do the claims, but I work with the claims agents, mostly because of the time required to put these applications together. And this is why it's so important for veterans and people advocating for veterans to work with a VSO, because there are nuances and sometimes you could get denied. And like you said, you can appeal it. And people sometimes just don't either they don't have the wherewithal or they're just, it's just too much, you know, to do it again. And there's so much paperwork and it's laborious. But the training program that you offer, is it to anybody that works with veterans who's interested? Like, how does that work if somebody wants to become a VSO through your agency?
Yeah, one of the major principles that we have as an agency is we're not looking to cling to this information, right? This is information about the law that applies to everybody, and in particular, everyone who is a veteran or a spouse of a veteran or a child of a veteran or a parent of a veteran. And so we do a lot of outreach work. We do a lot of training work. We had the honor of working with MJHS and Ashton specifically to get him accredited as a veteran service officer. We work with the county agencies all across our state in the same capacity. If you are in a agency that say is a not-for-profit organization, for example, and you want to receive that training and you want to actually go that route of looking to become a veteran service officer, I'm going to put my contact information over in chat to the whole group. And please feel free to reach out to me because we're happy to work with folks to structure a MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the organization, and make certain that they understand what the whole thing is about being a veteran service officer and how that all works. And then we'll provide the training and get the information out there. We also do a lot of trainings beyond just the veteran service officer training. If that's more than what you need, if you want like just a 1 hour briefing that covers the basics, we can do that, right? So we're happy to meet you where you are, in person, online, we can do both. But the main thing is we want to get the information out there because the stuff that I went over today is really just the tip of the iceberg in this one particular area of end-of-life care, right? So there's so much else that we can talk about and that we're happy to talk about to make certain that we're dispelling the mythology that is far too common. You know, every day I hear, oh, someone said, or I read on Facebook, or I read on whatever Twitter is called now. And a lot of times what they're reading is not accurate. We want to make certain that the most up-to-date information gets out there in this very dynamic and very changeable field. And that way, when people work with veterans, you're providing that best possible, most up-to-date information. And the biggest thing I want to dispel in that regard is this is not proprietary information to lawyers. Okay, I've had people through the years say, oh, we can't do this work, we're not attorneys. That's okay. There's really nothing magic about being an attorney, right? It's a matter of taking the law, learning the law, applying the law to the facts of a case, and synthesizing the two together. Every single person here can do that. It's just a matter of getting the training and the education and the workup of how to do that. But please, no one should feel intimidated by this stuff, even though, yeah, it can get a little bit long-winded and legalese heavy and all that kind of stuff. That's just language. We can take the language and unpack it and break it down so it makes sense. And that way you can explain it then to the clients or customers or patients whom you're serving, because we all benefit by that information being shared.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for all that you do, Benjamin.
Thank
just
you,
always
Ashley.
so grateful. You're very welcome. And I do see that there's some very important questions coming in the Q&A. We will address them. But right now I'd like to turn to Michael Fenn because he has an amazing PowerPoint presentation about burial benefits here in New York. So Michael, take it away.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. And I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get this all set up. Again, my name is Mike or Michael. Going. Can everyone see?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So I'm here at Long Island National Cemetery, administrative officer. We're here in Farmingdale, New York. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, on Long Island there are two national cemeteries. Calverton is out east. Little bit of kind of history. We when Cypress Hills National Cemetery closed, which is one of the original 13, and it's out in Brooklyn. If you ever get the chance to go out there, it's amazing. But after World War I, U.S. government realized that there were just too many veterans. There were 500,000 alone in New York City, and that little 18 acres in Brooklyn was not going to cut it. That's when we were opened in Farmingdale. And in 1978, we closed to new casketed burials, and that's when Calverton opened. Calverton, like I said, is very busy. It's out towards Riverhead on Long Island. But what we're doing, and this is very exciting, and it's soon gonna be there in the city, but it'll be the first time in almost 90 years that New York City and the 5 boroughs will have their own operating national cemetery. We are going to be opening up St. Albans in St. Albans, Queens, right next to, for those of you that are familiar with that area, it is right next to the State Veterans Home at St. Albans Medical Center. So, go to my next slide. All right. Eventually, this is essentially the area that we cover. You can see it goes pretty far up into New York State. You've got also Washington's Crossing in New Jersey. There are national cemeteries around. St. Albans is going to be operating here come this fall. Hopefully, we're going to be having the actual dedication ceremony on November 9th. But up until that point, veterans that lived in the 5 boroughs or families that lived upstate New York or even parts of New Jersey, they wanted to inter their loved one in a national cemetery. They had to come out. If they wanted it to be in a casketed burial, they had to come out to Calverton, or even here if they were a reopener. But they had to come out to Long Island, and for a lot of people that's difficult if they have transportation or not. So NCA realized this and started the urban initiative so that we can open up give people an option. Now it will be a columbarium where there'll be no in-ground burials. It'll all be in a wall. But if you want to be cremated and those are your wishes, we'll be able to support, and the veteran and their family can have their final resting place closer to home. Some of the things we're going to talk about quickly. What happens? Who do you have to call? What are the procedures? It's one of the hardest time in anybody's life. All right, the families especially. We really aim to make it a very simple and easy process. We don't want to cause any more pain or hardship than that family's already experiencing. A lot of people say, this is going to be, a lot of red tape or this or that, and it's not. They're usually very surprised at how quickly we work, and how much care we put into it. About 98, 99% of my staff are veterans or retired like myself. The other 1 or 2% is husband, wife, brother, sister, mother served. So they're tied to our veterans also, even if they didn't serve. So for us, this is like taking care of family, and we take that very seriously. I'll talk about eligibility verification, committal services, what to expect when you're there, monuments, inscriptions, pre-need, which is something that's very important, burial allowance, and interment operations. The National Scheduling Office, they're in St. Louis. So when a veteran passes, most people will work with a funeral home. If it's going to be a casketed interment, the funeral home will be taking care of most of the preparations. If you're working with a funeral home, going to have your loved one cremated, and then you're going to plan committal or interment sometime down the road, then we can work it so that we work with you directly. And even if there's people that are in the audience today, maybe they have a parent, a loved one, that are in their home. They want to inter them in a national cemetery, but they just aren't sure how to do that. Or, hey, maybe it's been too long. I've had, my uncle for 10 years since he passed. How do I get started? Start with a phone number. Start with a call. They're very rarely closed. They're open 7 days a week. All right. We conduct our interments. So when you do call to schedule, we conduct our interments Monday through Friday. Here at Long Island National, we start at 10 a.m. for interments, and the last interment committal ceremony is going to be at 2 p.m. All right. Sometimes a federal holiday might fall on one of those, and we may do a rare, maybe happens once a year, where we do interments on a Saturday, but that's known far in advance. Okay. Really, you're gonna call one, and I have the number on here, but I'm gonna say it again, and I'll probably say it a few times during the brief. But it is 1-800-535-1117. All right. You're going to call them up, tell them, hey, I want to inter my loved one, a veteran, or say if the spouse predeceases the veteran. Some people hold on thinking that they can't inter mom first or the spouse first. That's not the case. Okay. They're going to ask for the documents such as DD 214, or if it's World War II, their separation papers. If you cannot find those, there are things we can do to help to find them. And if you don't have them now and you're in the audience and you're not sure, hey, I think I lost mine. If you're in the VA system, probably have it somewhere. You go to your release of information office and they can probably print you off a copy, or you can contact the National Archives, archives.gov, and they'll send you what they have of your personnel record from when you were in the military. The more information you have and you can send, the better. It makes that eligibility process go quicker. They usually turn around, get within a day, the verification. It does not take long. Sometimes I've seen it within a few minutes. As long as the eligibility department is able to verify the veteran's service, their character of service, that's it. That's it. It's, the case is moving on. Basically, what's key to this is the character of service. The document must show the release from service was under conditions, at least other than dishonorable. Okay, our eligibility criteria is a little bit different from the Veterans Health Administration, for healthcare. Ours is a little more open than theirs would be. All right. If you don't have any, like I said, the scheduling office agents are going to assist in that verification process. We have ability to get into other VA servers where we can verify your military record. All right, we're going to work with you. Again, I go back to my first statement. We don't want to cause any more undue pain or hardship than that family's already experiencing. What you want to know, all right, basically have the information, what cemetery do you want to be interred at? As I said, there's going to be another one we're going to be adding up here, St. Albans. All right. Cyprus is completely closed. So that's not a possibility, but St. Albans, Calverton, Long Island National, is someone interred already here? A lot of families don't realize they may have lost maybe a child in the 50s or 60s. They may be buried here at Long Island National. Now you have another option. So we just need to know, if you know the grave number, who's already interred. All right, we're going to need to know the decedent's full name, gender, social security, date of death, date of birth, and relationship. Is it a veteran? Is it a dependent? Contact info. If you have a funeral home working with you, we're going to want their info, what funeral home it is, their number, their fax, email, everything. You're also going to have the next of kin. Now, we run into this a lot. The next of kin is essentially whoever made that call or whoever the funeral home is giving to the scheduling office. It does not have to be the spouse, because we're going to contact and we're going to talk to whoever is listed as the next of kin. So if it's a daughter, if it's maybe mom is just not able to, kind of partake and help with some of the arrangements, you can have another family member listed, or you can do what's called a care of. You can put mom's name and then care of Kim Smith, who is the daughter. What type of religious emblem, if any, that you would want. And we're going to send a list. There are over 90 to choose from, and it runs the gamut from Christian to atheist, to several other type of military type symbols. All right, we're going to want to know where they resided, to make sure that it works best for the family. Maybe there's another national cemetery that's closer to them. Zip code of the decedent at time of death, county, type of burial, casket or cremation, the marital status. We want to know this so that we can plan for further interments. If veterans buried in a private cemetery, all right, but the spouse wants to be buried in a national cemetery, we need to know where the other one is interred. If you have an urn, or you want to place the casket or the urn in another type of container, we need to know that and the size too, because that helps us when we prepare the grave. We also need to know if there's any adult dependent children. Adult dependent children may be eligible for interment in a national cemetery. Generally, adult dependent children are those children that have been disabled since childhood, unable to care for themselves, not married, unable to work, and basically either had to have lived in an institution or a home or need 24-hour care from a parent or a guardian. Okay. It's not if someone developed a disability later in life or, something unfortunate happened. This is meant for true, basically, since birth. That individual, that child can be eligible for internment. So at least gives the family a little bit of peace of mind. If you're going to have military honors, and has the decedent never been convicted of a capital crime, all right? If they've a felony, anything like that, it has happened, all right? Like I said, something other than dishonorable, that's what we need to see. All right. Once we've verified that, all right, then they also become eligible for headstone and presidential memorial certificate benefits. Talked about this. The spouse can be interred. Now, veteran passes away. Spouse remarries. Remarries a gentleman that was a non-veteran. She can still be interred with the veteran in the national cemetery because at the time of the veteran's passing, he or she was legally married to them. So that's also one benefit some people get worried about. Yes, the non-veteran can still be buried. All right, benefits are now extended to opposite and same-sex marriages. They become ineligible if they're legally divorced. All right, separated, that's still good, but if it's court ordered and legally binding, then they become ineligible. Minor children are also eligible. Under 20 years of age or under 23 years of age, and if they're pursuing a full-time course of instruction at an approved educational institution. Unmarried adult or child is a person who become, as I said before, permanently physically, mentally disabled prior to reaching the age of 20, 21 years of age, or before 23 years of age, if going for a degree of some sort. But again, the key is never having been married. There are state and tribal cemeteries here in New York. I believe we have two. A new one is just opening up. They had looked at opening up either in Smithtown out here on Long Island. I think they were even looking at a place either by Ulster or even Westchester County, but they decided on outside of Syracuse. But there are state cemeteries. So if a National Guardsman who was never federally mobilized and is not eligible for interment in a national cemetery, they may be able to be interred in a state or tribal cemetery. If you live in an area that is closer to a state cemetery, the VA can assist with getting you into that if that's what you wanted. If you didn't want your loved one to be, down in St. Albans or Long Island and you live upstate, you can do that too as a veteran. So a little bit how this goes. All right. When a veteran or the dependent, when eligibility has been certified, will receive an email notice from the National Scheduling Office. All right. We start putting together the package, getting all the information together. We're going to call either the next of kin or the funeral home if that's what the family wants. All right. We're going to send out our inscription form. So this way that the family gets an understanding of what the basics of the inscription are, what has to be on there, and then they can start planning any memorialization inscription, any additional inscription that they would love to put on there. We're going to create all of our records for interment. We're going to schedule the interment. You can even if you don't know when you want to do it, but you want to start the process, you can do that and leave it unscheduled. All we ask for is at least 2 days notice before you come, so that way we can properly prepare. All right. Say if it was tomorrow, we've already created all the paperwork. We prepare the grave. We have all our paperwork done. Everything is set to go. So that way when the family comes, it's a seamless process. They can concentrate really just on celebrating the life and remembering their loved one that they lost. All right. We're also going to confirm when we go out there, are you having clergy? Are you having honors? That way we can ensure that everybody is set for that service. So when you come in, we've already got the military set in place. The clergy, whether it's an imam or rabbi, priest, they're ready to go too. The family comes in and the service can continue. All right. Day of the service, our reps are assigned. They're going to be given the case. They're going to meet the family, and they're going to be the face of the National Cemetery, and they're going to work with that family for that day, help them conduct that service, and then afterward ensuring that the family, if they need help with the inscription form or the monument, we're going to help them with that. And we make sure, obviously, before we do anything, that everybody is here. All right, committal services. We do it for caskets or cremations. Another option is if you don't want to have a service, maybe you had honors at the funeral home or the church, and you're not going to have any clergy, or you don't want to say anything, you could do what's called a witness only. A witness only is where we take you right to the grave. You witness the interment of your loved one and the closing of the grave, and then we'll take our leave. Family can stay there as long as they want. Direct interment means there's no family, no service, no honors. We get urns in the mail if a family's not able to make it, and they ask us just to inter right away. All right, these are just some of the funeral honors and burial flag requests. A couple examples of monuments. Ours are mostly the uprights, and they're granite niche covers. And then the Presidential Memorial Certificate. Family can have as many of these as they want. They can send away for more. And pre-need. If you have the ability, there is a pre-need. It's in the can be sent out. I don't want to run too long here, but that's an important thing. Get that done. The pre-need. You can look on the VA. There's a link that was just up, and it can be sent out. That way, your eligibility is determined, and it can basically be a further seamless process. And then burial allowances. If you want to be buried outside of the National Cemetery, the VA can pay some money towards that. And then the Veterans Legacy Memorial, each veteran will have that. Kind of went through the last one a little quickly, but I know you have some other things, and there's a question and answer at the end.
Thank you so much, Michael. There is so much to share in a limited amount of time. We've got 15 minutes left. We are going to turn to the QA here momentarily. But just to highlight the military honors, which is through the Department of Defense. This is something that's also for anybody with an honorable discharge. during their service. They'll come and play taps and fold the American flag. And it's just a remarkable send-off. And so many of the families that we work with at MJHS take advantage of this benefit. And so they should. The patriots out there that want to have that type of a send-off, it's really a meaningful tribute for families to access. And Benjamin pointed something out that was really interesting. The New York State Veterans Cemetery in Romulus, New York, accepts interment for National Guard members, which is very unique. It's a newer cemetery. It's on the former site of the Sampson Naval Training Station and Sampson Air Force Base, but it's our very first New York State veteran cemetery. So we're really grateful for New York, and certainly for the Department of Veteran Services for spearheading that and making it so, and also for honoring our National Guard members. And I get questions sometimes, and because the VA will cover medallions and tombstones for veterans. I had one family reach out to me that their father's buried in a very remote cemetery, and they wanted to get a tombstone for him, and the VA is helping them, and he was buried in 1982. And so the number for that is different. It's the VA Memorial Program, and I'm going to post that in a chat momentarily. But just to reassure everyone, we are going to share this PowerPoint with you when we send out a link to the recording of today's program, because there is just so much information, and all the resources are contained in here that were very carefully put together by Michael and his team. So thank you again for sharing this today. We're going to turn to a couple of questions just as we wrap things up here. I see that somebody had mentioned the best resource for getting a DD-214 is the National Archives, also known as the National Personnel Record Center, and this is very true. And in our work, we're able to put in a letter to expedite the request because the patients we're working with are terminal, and they can turn that around usually within 5 business days. Which is pretty remarkable given how busy they are processing so many requests for military archives and history. One of the questions we had here today, I'm going to turn to our panelists here. My husband, I'm going to read it to you, was from an anonymous attendee. My husband and I are both military retired. He has a diagnosis for early Alzheimer's, so his memory is now impacted. We completed a claim, but they would not let me in the room when he went in for his compensation claim. I've been with him for 26 years, so I'm aware and can answer questions that he may not be able to answer. Is there any other way to go about his claims?
So I'll give a few thoughts about that. One is that when I hear about these situations where a spouse or a partner asks to come into the compensation exam and is told by the examiner that they can't, kind of gives me a bit of high blood pressure, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. You are allowed to have, you as the veteran are allowed to have someone come with you into the compensation exam room. Oftentimes they are not allowed to be an active participant in the exam, but they can be in the room. That's number one. Number two, in a situation like this, where there is a cognitive challenge that's going on, it would certainly seem logical to me that the compensation and pension examiner would not only allow, but actually welcome the other party into the room, so that way these dialogues can take place. So I'd be interested in speaking with you more about this. We do encounter an unfortunate number of cases where Alzheimer's or dementia is at issue, and sometimes the person who's assigned to handle the exam does not always do the right thing. For example, we just had one recently that we wrapped up this week, victoriously, I'm glad to say, involving a veteran with Alzheimer's who, among various medical conditions, has hearing loss. And the examiner, on contract with the VA, said, well, we can't conduct the exam because it's a word recognition exam, and the veteran with Alzheimer's is not going to have the cognition necessary to be able to recognize the words that we're using. And they tried to deny the claim based on that. Our agency pushed back vehemently and said, no, you can't do that. You can't penalize a veteran because they have a diagnosis of a cognitive impairment. Sorry, you don't get to do that. find a different test, find some other way to provide a adjudication of the severity of the veteran's hearing loss. And the VA did, to their credit, they went back, they found alternative ways to measure the hearing loss properly, and the veteran won that claim. So sometimes we do see these situations where it might be a little bit out of the ordinary because a cognitive condition is involved. This sounds like one of those. Please, you have my contact information over in chat. Please do not be shy about reaching out. Very interested in hearing more details about this and seeing how our agency can help advocating on both of your behalf.
Thank you, Benjamin. There was another question from Amy, the wife of a veteran that served 1972 through 74 in South Korea with an honorable discharge, and he has his DD-214, and they're trying to find out if he's entitled to any benefits. I asked Amy if you live in New York State, because obviously the best resource for you would be the State Department of Veterans Services, and they would pair you with a benefits claims agent. But if you don't, I would encourage you to reach out to your department or division of Veteran Services in the state where you live. Every state has a program similar to the DVS program here in the state of New York. A quick synopsis of the history. Didn't this start after World War II, Benjamin, when they realized that it was just too difficult for veterans to file claims, so they started this agency program nationally? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we've been around ever since. So more than 7 decades of service. And reading that question and hearing that question, one thing that comes to mind is just to reiterate right off the bat that it's never too late. So date of discharge was 1974. Even if the veteran has not filed yet, that's okay. If they have a current disabling condition or multiple conditions that are linked to their time in service, absolutely, they can and should file for those benefits, and veteran service officers are here to help with that work. So please definitely reach out. If you're in New York State, on the state benefit side too, if you own a home in New York State, you would be eligible for the what's called the alternative veterans property tax exemption by virtue of that wartime service, with an additional tax exemption layered on top of that for the combat service, because depending on where they were in South Korea, if they were on the demilitarized zone, that's considered part of the Vietnam theater under the property tax exemption. So a lot of possibilities out there. We need to hear more details to know the right directions to go in, but please definitely reach out to us if you're in New York. If you're in a state other than New York, you can reach out to me as well. And I'll be happy to link you with our counterparts in those other states.
Awesome. Awesome. We're getting some good feedback and the Q&A in response to the Alzheimer's case from Shelley. My veteran husband has TBI and a memory loss, and all of his doctors welcome me into all meetings due to this. So have confidence, be reassured to know that you have every right to be there with your loved one, especially when they're struggling with mental health issues. Whatever person told you that was wrong, and I'm sorry that happened. And we're getting some nice comments too about the quality of the program, so thank you so much. We've got a couple minutes left. If anybody has any other questions, please let me know. I do have a little couple of things, housekeeping things to conclude with here. While we're waiting for more questions, just mark your calendars. November 19th, MJHS is partnering with the VA and the New York State Department of Veterans Services and the New York Indian Council and the Smithsonian National Museum of the Native American to bring you a Native American veterans event from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. November 19th. We're still working on the marketing materials, but we're going to be having entertainment, some resources, hopefully some food. You can follow your day at 3 o'clock and have a tour of the museum and see some of the amazing exhibits there. But we're going to be highlighting some of the contributions and the history Native Americans have given this country ever since it's been here. And to me, I'm just so honored to be part of this program. So we are also looking for volunteers at MJHS. If anybody is interested, please reach out to me. You have my email address. I posted it in the chat. It's here. I'm Ashton. Everybody will be getting a link to the recording of today's program, along with the PowerPoint and the resources that we shared, including the MJHS Veteran Resource Guide, which is super handy. And there's a lot of great ideas and things that you'll see in there that might present some additional questions. And if that happens, please feel free to follow up and reach out to us. We're here for you. And also October 26th, it's the last day to register to vote in New York State. So mark your calendar for that. If you're not already registered, please exercise your right to vote. And I think that is it. I do want to thank my guests. Let me see, do we have any questions popping up here? Thank you, Dr. Brown. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your kind words. And please ask my question aloud. Question from Janine Ferrari. Yes, a resident of Montrose served on the John R. Pierce, but the VA cannot find this in their records. What is his family to do? That is an excellent question. Thank you for flagging that, Janine.
So one of my first reactions in a case like that, where the service records cannot be located, is there any possibility we can track down either somebody who served aboard ship with that veteran, who can write a letter saying, yep, I was there. I can verify that this person was aboard the John R. Pierce. Is there somebody in the family who can verify it? Did the veteran keep a diary while they are in service? If so, that information can be used. The nice thing about the veterans law space is you're not dealing with a lot of the restrictions of the rules of evidence that you would have in, say, criminal law or even family law. You get a much more wide open space to go out and track down whatever evidence you can get your hands on and use it. And so a lot of times in situations where the military records are not providing the answers that we need, we can try to find some other creative pathways. And, you know, family, friends, battle buddies can be great sources of verification. Any types of, like I said, diary entries are great. Letters home. If anyone hung on to a letter home that was sent by that veteran while they were, you know, either aboard that ship or talking about just getting off the ship or being about to board it, anything like that can be useful for showing that type of verification.
Thank you, Benjamin. Well, we've got a couple minutes left, 2 minutes exactly. Any final thoughts, Michael? I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, you know, if you have any questions, our number and everything is up there. Like I said, we're you know, the most important thing is we're here to assist. And you know, if you have that chance now, make sure if you're the vet and you can hear me, make sure your family knows where your DD 214 is. All right, make sure your kids know where they are. Makes everything go easy. I cannot stress to you enough. You know, we really see here the difference, and I know, you know, especially where you guys work, you see it. The family that is prepared, and you know, even though it's a hard thing to face, the family that kind of plans ahead and gets the ball rolling. It takes so much stress and everything off the rest of the family, and I'll tell you, you can see it here when the family is able to, I don't want to say like relax, but really celebrate and remember and be together and support each other, just because almost everything was taken care of. It's such a night and day difference, vice the family where they had to go, you know, rooting through everything dad owned just to find the paper, and then they couldn't, and then they were worried they were running short on time. So you know, that preparation makes a difference. And if you know, if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your kids and for your husband, for your wife, whoever. Do it for them.
Well said, my friend. Well, thank you so much to the New York State Department of Veteran Services, Benjamin Pomerantz, Mary Lazama, and Michael. Thank you for being here too, representing the National, or the Long Island National Cemetery and Cypress Hills National Cemetery. Michael Fenn, you were great. Thank you to MJHS. Thank you to the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization for putting this We Honor Veterans program together. We honor veterans every day. Thank you for the work you do. I really appreciate all of you being here. So have a good rest of your week. Take care.